Throughout history, there have been great civilizations and empires spanning the globe. Some of these have left behind remarkable sites and buildings which are still prominent today, whereas others, for one reason or another, have been lost to the sands of time. Today, we will explore a few of the most legendary lost cities, including mythical cities that may or may not have existed, such as Atlantis and El Dorado. Angkor Wat, which roughly translates to the City of Temples in the Khmer language, was built in the first half of the 12th century by the Khmer king Suryavarman II. It was originally built as a Hindu temple dedicated to the god Vishnu, but was converted to a Buddhist temple in the 13th century. The construction of Angkor Wat is believed to have taken over 30 years and involved hundreds of thousands of workers. The temple was built using sandstone, which had to be transported from over 25 kilometers away. Angkor Wat was the center of the Khmer Empire and was a major religious and cultural center. It was also a major pilgrimage site for Hindus and Buddhists from all over Southeast Asia. Angkor Wat began to decline in the 15th century after the Khmer Empire was invaded by Thailand. The temple complex was abandoned and fell into disrepair. However, it was rediscovered by French explorers in the 19th century and has since been restored and preserved. Today, Angkor Wat is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Cambodia and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Machu Picchu was built in the 15th century by the Inca Empire, one of the most advanced pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas. The Incas were skilled engineers and builders, and Machu Picchu is a testament to their ingenuity and craftsmanship. The exact purpose of Machu Picchu is unknown, but it's believed to have been a royal estate or sacred religious site for Inca leaders. The city is built on a mountain ridge high above the Urubamba River and is surrounded by lush green mountains. Machu Picchu is divided into two main sections, the agricultural sector and the urban sector. The agricultural sector is made up of terraces where the Incas grew crops such as corn, potatoes and quinoa. The urban sector is where the Incas lived, worked and worshipped. The urban sector of Machu Picchu is home to many impressive structures, including the Temple of the Sun, the Intihuatana, and the main square. Machu Picchu was abandoned in the 16th century, just before the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. The city remained hidden from the outside world for centuries, until it was rediscovered by American explorer Hiram Bingham in 1911. Machu Picchu is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Peru, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The city is a marvel of Inca engineering and architecture, and is a must-see for anyone visiting Peru. Petra is an ancient city carved into the sandstone rock of Jordan. It was the capital of the Nabatean kingdom, which flourished from the 1st century BC to the 2nd century AD. The Nabateans were skilled traders and engineers, and they used their wealth to build Petra into a magnificent city with temples, tombs, palaces and other structures. One of the most famous structures in Petra is the Treasury, a massive temple facade carved into the rock. The Treasury is thought to have been a tomb, but its exact purpose is still unknown. Another famous structure in Petra is the monastery, which is the largest monument in the city. The monastery is carved into a high cliff face and is accessible by a long flight of stairs. Petra was also a major center of the caravan trade, and it was located on the crossroads of important trade routes between Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea. The Nabateans were experts in water management, and they built dams and cisterns to collect and store rainwater. This allowed them to thrive in the arid desert environment. Petra began to decline in the 3rd century AD due to a number of factors, including the decline of the caravan trade and the rise of the Roman Empire. The city was eventually abandoned and forgotten. It was not rediscovered until the early 19th century when Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt disguised himself as a native and infiltrated the city. Persepolis was the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire of ancient Persia, located in southern Iran. The earliest remains of Persepolis date back to 515 BC, but the city was not completed until the reign of Artaxerxes I in early 4th century BC. Persepolis was built on a massive artificial terrace that rises 50 feet above the surrounding plain. The terrace is divided into two main areas, the western platform and the eastern platform. The western platform is home to the Apadana, a huge audience hall that could accommodate up to 10,000 people. The eastern platform is home to the Palace of Xerxes, the Palace of Darius, and the Gate of All Nations. Persepolis was more than just a ceremonial capital, it was also a major religious center and a place where the Achaemenid kings could display their wealth and power. The city was decorated with elaborate carvings and sculptures that depicted scenes from Persian history and mythology. Persepolis was destroyed by Alexander the Great in 330 BC. The city was never rebuilt and it fell into ruin. However, the ruins of Persepolis are still impressive today, and they provide a glimpse into the grandeur of the Achaemenid Empire. Troy was an ancient city located in what is now northwestern Turkey. It's best known as the setting of the Trojan War, a legendary conflict that is recounted in Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The archaeological site of Troy has been excavated by archaeologists for over a century, and they have now discovered 9 layers of settlements, dating from the early Bronze Age to the Roman period. The earliest layer, Troy I, dates back to around 3600 BC. Troy II, which dates back to around 2500 BC, is the most notable of the early layers. It was a large and prosperous city with a population of around 10,000 people. Troy II was fortified by a massive wall, and it had a number of impressive public buildings, including a palace and a temple. Troy VI, which dates back to around 1750 BC, is the layer that is most closely associated with the Trojan War. It was a smaller and less prosperous city than Troy II, but it was still a fortified city with a population of around 5,000 people. The Trojan War is believed to have taken place around 1200 BC. The war is said to have been fought between the Greeks and the Trojans over the abduction of Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta. The war lasted for 10 years and it ended with the destruction of Troy. The Trojan War is one of the most famous events in Greek mythology, and it has been the subject of countless works of art and literature over the centuries. However, there is no scholarly consensus on whether or not the Trojan War actually took place. Some scholars believe that the war was a real event, while others believe that it is a fictional story that is based on real events. Regardless of whether or not the Trojan War actually took place, Troy was a real city that played an important role in the history of the Eastern Mediterranean region. Babylon was an ancient city located in southern Mesopotamia in what is now Iraq. It was founded around 2300 BC and rose to prominence in the 18th century BC under the rule of King Hammurabi. Hammurabi conquered neighbouring city-states and created a vast empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Babylon was one of the richest and most powerful cities in the ancient world. It was a centre of trade, culture and learning. The city was home to a number of impressive public buildings, including the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Ishtar Gate and the Etemenanki Ziggurat. Babylon declined in the 12th century BC after it was conquered by the Assyrians. The city was rebuilt by the Neo-Babylonians in the 7th century BC, but it was never as powerful as it had been under Hammurabi. Babylon was finally destroyed by the Persians in 539 BC. Despite its decline, Babylon remained an important cultural centre for centuries to come. The city was home to a number of famous scholars and philosophers, including Thales of Miletus and Pythagoras. Jandu, also known as Shangdu, was the summer capital of the Mongol Empire during the Yuan dynasty. It was founded by Kublai Khan in 1256 and was located in what is now Inner Mongolia. Jandu was a vast and magnificent city with a population of over 100,000 people. It was home to a number of impressive palaces, gardens and temples. The city was also a major centre of trade and culture. One of the most famous features of Jandu was its gardens. The gardens were said to be filled with exotic plants and animals from all over the Mongol Empire. The gardens also had a number of pavilions and kiosks where Kublai Khan and his guests could relax and enjoy the scenery. Jandu was also a major religious centre. The city was home to a number of Buddhist temples, including the White Pagoda, which was one of the largest Buddhist temples in the world at the time. Jandu began to decline after the fall of the Yuan dynasty in 1368. The city was abandoned and eventually fell into ruin. However, the ruins of Jandu were rediscovered in the 19th century and they have since been excavated by archaeologists. The legend of El Dorado, the lost city of gold, has been captivating explorers and adventurers for centuries. It is said to be located somewhere in South America, and countless expeditions have been launched in search of its riches. The legend of El Dorado is thought to have originated with the Muisca people, who inhabited the Altiplano Cundinabriense region of Colombia. The Muisca had a ceremony in which their new chieftain would cover himself in gold dust and bathe in Lake Guatavita. The ceremony was thought to symbolize the union of the chieftain with the sun god. The Spanish conquistadors heard about the Muisca ceremony and believed that Lake Guatavita was the source of vast treasure of gold. In 1537, Gonzalo Jimenez de Quesada and his men invaded the Muisca territory and forced the Muisca to reveal the location of Lake Guatavita. Quesada and his men drained the lake, but they found only a few gold artifacts. Despite this setback, the legend of El Dorado persisted. Conquistadors and explorers continued to search for the lost city of gold, but they were never able to find it. The legend of El Dorado eventually became a symbol of the lure of wealth and the dangers of greed. Today, the legend of El Dorado is still alive and well. It continues to inspire writers, artists, and filmmakers. The history of Shangri-La can be traced back to the Tibetan Buddhist myth of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom where people live in peace and harmony. Shambhala is said to be located somewhere in the Himalayas, but its exact location is unknown. In 1933, British author James Hilton published the novel Lost Horizon, in which he described a fictional Himalayan valley called Shangri-La. The valley is inhabited by people who live for hundreds of years and who are isolated from the outside world. Hilton's novel was a bestseller, and the name Shangri-La quickly became synonymous with an earthly paradise. It has since been used to describe a variety of places, including resorts, hotels, and even a mountain range in China. The story of Atlantis is one of the most enduring legends in world history. It is a tale of a lost civilization that was said to be more advanced than any other on Earth. Atlantis is said to have been a vast island nation located in the Atlantic Ocean beyond the Pillars of Hercules, now known as the Strait of Gibraltar. The story of Atlantis was first told by the Greek philosopher Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. Plato described Atlantis as a powerful and advanced kingdom that had conquered much of the known world. However, he also said that Atlantis became arrogant and corrupt, and that the gods punished them by sinking the island into the sea. Plato's story of Atlantis has been debated by scholars for centuries. Some believe that the story is based on a real event, such as the eruption of the Santorini volcano in the Aegean Sea around 1600 BC. Others believe that the story is purely fictional and that it was meant to be a moral allegory about the dangers of hubris and greed. Whether or not Atlantis was a real place, the story of Atlantis has captured the imagination of people for centuries. It has been the subject of countless books, movies, and television shows. It has also inspired generations of explorers and treasure hunters to search for the lost city. Explorers and treasure hunters from all over the world have traveled to various locations in the Atlantic Ocean in search of the lost city. However, no definitive evidence of Atlantis has ever been found. Despite the lack of evidence, the search for Atlantis continues. The legend of the lost city is simply too captivating to give up on. Who knows, maybe one day the lost city of Atlantis will finally be found.